kind of a fascinating piece in the Washington Post breaking down why food allergies have become so much more prominent. And there's a variety of theories that they float here. That one, though, that seems increasingly clear is that the American Academy of Pediatrics really screwed up by telling parents not to give their kids peanuts when they were really little. So take a look at this chart. This was flagged by Jeff Stein. He says parents shielding toddlers from potential allergens like peanuts on the advice of the American Academy of Pediatrics has instead tragically contributed to a big rise in food allergies among young Americans. And you can see that chart there on the side that shows it. And let me read you a little bit from the article. So one thing that they float is the so-called hygiene hypothesis, that basically since we, all but eradicated things like hookworms, which is a good thing that we, all but eradicated hookworms back in the 1980s, and tapeworms, all the classic parasites are mostly kaput. Without those actual threats, our immune system downshifts to tackle the biggest possible threat on the horizon. So that's one theory of why you see so many more food allergies among kids today than in previous generations. They say it's looking for stuff to do and it's staying busy, but it's busy doing stupid stuff like reacting to walnuts and birch pollen. But they go on to say that's not the only explanation. Another is that we're overprotecting our kids, and they flag specifically the advice to parents to avoid peanuts in kids under the age of 3. That guidance started in the year 2000, and they say that by the age of 3, it's way too late to accustom kids to those foods and avoid most food allergies through exposure. One expert said that led to this whole epidemic of people not feeding their kids the allergens early, which then probably contributed to the increase in allergies because you're not giving the immune system a chance to train when it's best suited to learn. Now those guidelines have all been reversed, so hopefully we see an improvement. But the number of things, so I had my first daughter in 2008, and then I had my last daughter in 2017. And just in that decade, the number of things that change in terms of the guidance they give parents is wild. So like things that they told you absolutely not to do, or the way to put the baby down in 2000, for a nap in 2008 versus 2017. Certainly the way they told you to feed babies when Ella was born versus when Ida was born, totally different. And this was one of the key changes, because at the time with Ella, it was still don't give them any peanuts before age 3. And now that guidance is completely different. And, the guidance that they were giving parents just turns out was totally wrong and disastrous.
Listen, you should be skeptical whenever it comes to this, especially for kids. I'm a believer in kind of the Lindy phenomenon. That it's a reference. It was created by Nassim Taleb, just the idea that if something's been around for like 1,000 years, there's probably something to it. And the immune system's reaction, as you were talking about, well, if it doesn't have a lot of stuff to fight, then it's going to start fighting others. And then the idea about like the hygiene hypothesis, I've been a long believer in the idea that, keeping kids away from stuff is actually what makes them more fragile in the first place. I have even experienced it. I went to India a lot as a young child, and I almost never get foodborne illness, never. And I think it's because when I was very young, I was eating stuff which was not even close to as clean food and all these other things that we have now. Like even in almost all of Asia, I've been all over the world. I'll even go a little crazy and drink the water. Sometimes I almost never get any sort of foodborne illness.
The water, that is
yeah,
wild.
I'll drink some of the water, and not a lot, but like, if it's around, if you're 30. Once I was on a hike in Jordan, and I was with a bunch of American people, and it was like 14 miles, and we were all stupid, and we only brought like 1 bottle of water, and they were like, "I can't drink the water, I'm gonna die." And I was like, "Listen, man, I'm not gonna suffer dehydration." They looked at me like I was crazy because I put it in the stream and I chugged the whole thing. They're like, "Oh, he's gonna get sick." Nothing happened to me. But that's from a lifetime of kind of traveling around in the developing world. My point, though, is that we know this whenever it comes to the immune system and to how to develop that. But unfortunately, and I've always found this is a very Western thing, keep the kids away, like constantly doing the antibacterial soap and the hand sanitizer. I'm like, this can't be good. You shouldn't be living, human beings are meant to develop like anti-fragility. That's what our immune system and our bodies and all that stuff. It's probably, look, I don't have kids, so it's probably scary in order to put your kids through that or to see them get sick or all of that. But the alternative is way worse. I've seen family members with debilitating peanut allergies. It's scary, man. When they have a single peanut or something like that, the reaction is, I do not wish that on anybody. It's terrifying.
So when Ella was a baby, the idea with once they start to eat foods was, you know, you always give them the baby food out of the jar, out of the squeezy thing or whatever. And of course avoid the peanuts and you know, there were honey, there were a few other things that you're supposed to really avoid when they're little. And I don't know if those guidelines have changed as well. I have no idea. By the time Ida came around in 2017, then the guidance was, this might have changed again since I last had, you know, a baby, but then the guidance was, no, actually basically feed them what you eat.
Yes.
Just like make sure it's cut up in a way, or it's like they're able to mash it up with their gums, but they can actually do a lot more with the regular food than you think that they can. And so that's what we did more or less. And, you know, we never had any issues with her choking or any problems like that. And none of my kids have any allergies. So, you know, I didn't have any issues with the original guidance. But it was fascinating to me how different it had changed in just that short set of years.
Once again, throughout all of human history, you think they had baby food?
Baby food, right.
Or you think they cut up little pieces of meat and they're like, here, eat this. You know, and there's a 2019 article, Sweet Excess, how the baby food industry hooks toddlers on sugar, salt, and fat. Because you have hyper-processed stuff like Gerber and also all this sugary nonsense, which makes them, you know, basically they feed them hyper-palatable food at such a young age, which clearly resets their entire relationship to food. Oh, and then kids end up getting like disproportionately obese and fat, or they have like cravings and other things, which these are tiny little children, you know, the regulatory systems and their ability in order to like decide what's good for them or not. Like that's where your role as a parent. So yeah, once again, Lindy phenomenon wins throughout literally for hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution. The kid eats what you eat, and that's probably worse. Now, look, there's important exceptions to that.
Of course.
You know, in a bountiful environment like this. But you know, one thing we know for sure is feeding kids hyper palatable food is a disaster, and is something though. It's a very modern phenomenon, and we're just reawakening to like ancient knowledge of don't do that.
Yeah.
That's bad.
The one thing I want to put on the other side, which in some ways to me is almost contradictory to like the hygiene hypothesis on allergies, is another phenomenon. So there are a couple of disparities in terms of levels of allergies. So apparently women have a lot more allergies than men.
Yeah,
they think that's because
thing, right?
the female body is like, especially during pregnancy, much more reactive to like, you know, dealing with foreign bodies or whatever. So it creates a level of autoimmune sensitivity that is beyond a man typically in typical cases. But then Black children are twice as likely as white kids to have allergies. And one reason they theorize is because there's so much class disparity on average between white and Black kids that Black kids are more likely to be exposed to dust mites and cockroach allergens than their white friends. And that's likely, so like they say in this thing, if you put a dust mite next to a shrimp face to face, they look very similar, which is kind of disgusting and freaks me out. But anyway, that's part of why they theorize different living conditions. Because, you know, because of massive racial class disparities are what contribute to that. So a lot of theories all around, but the one that seems pretty concrete is that do feed your kids some level of peanuts before the age of 3, and that advice was disastrous.
Yeah. Exposure is scary, but it's good for you. It's good for you in the long run. All right, we'll see you guys later.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.